Here we go. Bujo. Nishna. Today is it's a special day. We have a little beautiful person sharing the time with us. So I wanted to first of all say thank you for this little person that's bringing energy and love and what kids do is they give us a chance to remind ourselves so that we all have that beautiful spirit that those kids bring out. Doesn't matter if you're mad or you're something's going on in your world. When you see a child like that, it just kind of dissolves all that, and you just want to look at that child and feel that comfort that that child is bringing you. So there's very beautiful gifts that a child brings just by being in the same room. So that's why we never let, most of the time, our children were always invited to our ceremonies. If you see them at certain ceremonies, they're playing around, they're goofing around, they're having fun, but they're listening, and they're encouraging us to bring them into the teachings that we have. So I'm really glad that when I look at other cultures, sometimes they kind of put their kids over and hide them out, while important business is being conducted. But in our way, that's how the kids learned, and we have to make sure that they're raised that way to feel part of the gathering. So I'm going to light our smudge bowl and start off by offering a little prayer to our Creator about this beautiful day. And if you don't know this language, just maybe feel it, because I heard when you talk to Creator, it doesn't even require a language. You can have a conversation with Creator by only sending your heart to Creator's heart, and then that message will come across. And sometimes we even use our tobacco. So a lot of people ask about at the powwow, when there's a drum, and how come they're just saying hey and stuff. It really has nothing to do with the language component of it. It's the heartfelt feeling of that drum connecting with their mother, the earth. And the language just is kind of secondary. It just, Creator knows what's being said and being generated through that music. And sometimes language gets in the way, because imagine, if people don't know what you're saying, you don't communicate. And sometimes we see that happen quite a lot. So it's the heart, and it's the feeling of doing and sharing, which is really the teaching tool. Language is important, very important, but it's just a matter of how, when two different languages come together, how do you still communicate? And I think in our history, we have a huge teaching around that, because when the newcomers came to North America, one of the obstacles we faced was communication and language. But when a person's hungry, it doesn't take words. You can tell. And when a person needs to breathe, and when a person is sick and needs medicine, sometimes they don't need that language to demonstrate that. So we were able to identify that humans can relate to each other, through our movements, through our spirit. And if you can even think of a child, like this little child here, doesn't have the English words or words yet, but he tells you when he's hungry, he tells you when he's tired or angry, or he doesn't have to share that in language, and he still communicates. And then when I've been at the bedside of many elders who were on that door of the Western world, where they're going back to Creator's world. And if you've ever been in that situation, you can feel that time is so important, because they can't speak anymore. They lose that ability, but they can tell you when they feel pain or when they feel love. And sitting at the bedside of my mother during that time, her eyes told me very clearly that her love for us was going to be stronger than the moment we're going to have in a moment when she walks through that Western door. So we have to consider communication through those methods. And I just like to consider that in today's prayer and language that I'm going to be able to use. Very fortunate to be able to use. So I'll light our smudge bowl up again and begin. And if we get more students come in, they're always welcome to come in, and we'll record this so everybody can kind of have this for future reference. But I'm gonna keep my hat on because I carry an eagle feather on there, and the veterans always told me if you're carrying an eagle feather, you don't have to take your hat off. So I'll leave it on for that purpose. Abujo Myeengun and Dejnikas Deshkan Zibin Don Jabah Myeengun Dodem, Gitche Monado, Chimi Gwetchman, Wakukina Manda Ganaj when Gish get on go. Gitche Monado, Gigado Endaso Gish get a Nishnabim win. Gitche Monado, Chimi Gwetchman, Wakukina Mashkiki, Osama, Wingash, Mashko de Wishkman Wagijik. Gitche Monado, Chimi Gwetchman, Wakukina Kino Mage win. Gitche Monado, Chimi Gwetchman, Wakukina Kino Mage, Wabanong, Jawanong, Epping the Schmuck, you wait none. Gichimanado, Chimigwetchmin, Waka Kinomage, Lashomsak, Nokamasakaye, Gichimanado, Chimigwetchmin, Waka Kinamanda ni Getsimuk. Gichimanado, Chimigwetchmin, Waka Kinabetki Deganan, Gichimanado, Chimigwetchmin, Waka Kina Getchini Bay, Ashkode. Gichimanado, Chimigwetchmin, Waka Kinawasiak Bumpy, Kina Getche. Ningo do de win. So starting off in that manner, there was a lot of things mentioned in that prayer, but a lot of it more or less talked about our gathering, our relationship, the people that we come to walk on earth with during this time. We're fortunate that we're in a time of reoccurrence and I guess revitalization of our culture. We've all been through some hardships through the history that we've all endured, and that's through residential schools and, you know, I guess a colonization that took place here in our part of the world. But there's a prophecy about the eighth fire or the eighth generation, and it talks about the relationship of going forward with knowing where we need to be and how we got there. And so when I think about that story, there's so much involved in it. Like we talk about our medicines, we talk about our struggles and our learning, but when that eighth fire is lit, we have an opportunity now to destinate our own route. We can follow a path that leads us back to our responsibilities. We've endured a lot of things in this period when the newcomers came and demonstrated a will to overtake our own relationship with our creator and dominate in a lot of ways that really created us some hardship. Although we look at that period, but we still know that in our heart, we kept that story alive. We kept the series of relationship through ceremony alive and well. We had to hide it, but we kept it alive, and we honor those people that endured persecution and actually death for keeping our ceremonies alive. So we come from a well established group of people here in North America that was put here through our creation stories. And if we think about those creation stories, how important they are to us, it'll always help us get through some hardship and decision making that we have to make when it comes to raising our children, comes to seeking partners in life, and even in today's scenario, employment opportunities and decisions you have to make. Because in every Indigenous teaching, no matter where you come from on Turtle Island, they all say to know where you came from is going to support your future, knowing where you're going. And so I've been able to hear these teachings for a number of years on this earth. And now that I work in education and I am a grandfather and I do things that reflect those teachings, it makes those decisions that I have to make a lot easier, because now that I can recover some of those stories, I can pass them on to our future generations. And that's really what my role is right now, working at a institution and just being a father and a grandfather. That's really important for me. So I've been lucky walking this earth in this time, finding out that um, the role that I was introduced to when I was born um, wasn't really even including the culture, because we came from a residential school family. Both my parents went there. One went to the Mohawk School Institute in Brantford, and my dad went to the one on Chippewas of the Thames called Mount Elgin. And so our first indication of our culture really didn't come from home because of how they were affected by those schools. So I kind of had to reach out and find some of that on my own. And I was acquainted to a gentleman from Oneida who just lost his partner just a month or two ago after almost 70 years of marriage. Dean George, he kind of put me on a path at a real young age to let me know that I was an Indigenous person, and there's something that we need to know about being Indigenous. We have to think about those stories that we were passed from generation to generation, and it set me on a path that I think leads to what I do today. And I always give them thanks for that, because in my own home, if my parents had their way at that young age, we wouldn't have been able to know our culture because of how they were treated at residential schools, and they thought by taking us away from our culture, then maybe we'll have a better chance of survival, because they thought only for the purpose that they were Indigenous, that they were mistreated, abused in the ways that they were. So they didn't want that for their children. So they moved us to Detroit, and that's where we kind of went to school. But knowing that the elders in the community there also went to residential schools, but they overcome the feeling that it was inadequate. They realized that that had to be taught to people, and they reached out to us. And I was so fortunate that they did, because I remember questioning a lot of these things and finding answers from prayer, through prayers that I learned how to talk to my creator. And these elders were always willing to assist me with that. And they put me on a vision quest, which my parents, of course, didn't want me to do, but I was able to do my first vision quest at a young age. And it really answered a lot of questions for me. It even brought a lot of, I guess, nervousness and tension too, because I also came up through a period of fighting back for our culture. I don't know if you ever heard of Wounded Knee, South Dakota before, but there was a battle that happened in 1973 that I was a part of. I was pretty young when I went to Wounded Knee, but I was able to see Indigenous people standing up and willing to die to keep their culture alive. And this was probably another triggering moment for me, because when I seen ammunition, I seen guns, and I seen people in ceremony together, I found out that no matter what obstacle came in my way in life, if I was to refer back to my ceremonies, my culture, then I would find the strength to endure all the hardships that were put in front of me. And now that I look back at all the things that I went through, what kept me balanced was going back to my culture. You know, I could have easily took a different route, you know, when things got hard. Alcohol and drugs were easy and accessible growing up, and peer pressure, you know, made it tempting, you know, to follow that route. And when I ran into issues that I think was hard for me, I seen a lot of other people turn to drugs and alcohol just to get rid of that thought for a little while, but in the damaging manner that they were doing it, really shortened their lives quite drastically. And I was lucky, like I tried those methods, but it wasn't comfortable for me at all. I found out there was a better route to find answers. They weren't always easy to find the answers. But standing in that circle at Wounded Knee, something happened. There was a ceremony being conducted by an older gentleman, and when he was doing his prayers and when he was doing his pipe ceremony, I was standing back and watching, and I seen the smoke come from that pipe, and it seemed to swirl up to the skies. And whenever I looked up there, I seen the clouds created a vision for me, and inside those clouds, I could see almost like faces of people that I didn't know who they were, but it looks like they were trying to send something to us, like in terms of a message or a thought. And I was kind of scared. I remember it was kind of a scary feeling because I never seen that before. And whenever I'd look up, I would kind of put my head back down, because am I just imagining this, or is it just something that maybe nobody else is seeing it except me? And I'm looking in the circle, and a lot of the older people that were in that circle were looking up to the heavens when the pipe was raised. And when you raise your pipe, you're making that call to those ancestors. And when those ancestors respond, not everybody sees it. Not everybody's in the same capability at that moment in their life to be able to see those things. And I think being a young person, being able to see what those elders were seeing, I was really didn't understand that. So I had to sit down and talk with elders later. And I said, what were those faces that I seen? I was scared of them. And they told me that time when we were doing that ceremony, that when they called those spirits come and they'll come into some people's hearts, and some people will feel it and be able to see them. Some people will know that it's there, but not be able to see them. And so I was very fortunate to be able to see them. And it took years for me to understand, what this was meant to be. The route that my life was about to take was really triggered by that moment. And so after we left Wounded Knee and came home, and I had to go seek different elders of different nations to kind of help me through with what I was able to find. And it really took me a lot of years, because even through those teachings in my young years, that invitation to a lifestyle that most teens have to face was really strong. And living in a time when Native people really couldn't get jobs, they were still looked at, and stereotyped, and we weren't able to be really accepted intellectually in society. We were known at that time as to be the vanishing race. Indian people or Native people were welfare people. They were addicted to alcohol. They were not good workers. They were just looked at as castouts in society in the 70s. And I fit in that time frame where if I went to get a job, most people wouldn't even accept me, because once they found out I was Native, you're not going to stay. You're not, you're probably just going to drink and make hardship for us. So that's what we faced during that time. And I had to endure all those things, and I had to make a decision, whether it was easy to fall back into a life of alcohol, because if you're not able to survive or support yourself, then you end up with a group of people who all made a decision to well, let's just kill the pain, through what we have here. And life kind of took that route for many Indigenous people during that time. But I kept referring back to that ceremony, and that face in that cloud kept telling me there's something you need to do. There's a responsibility while you're here. And so every time I talked to an elder, I was told to give them tobacco and help me understand what that was. And making my way through that teen years and that hardship, I was able to gather knowledge a little bit, and it really helped me through that time. So this is why I've been so fortunate in my life to live a balanced life that has the culture. I can live in this non-Indigenous society world too. I can speak to them, and I can also reflect on my own ceremonies and build that balance between it all. And I think that's why Creator allowed me to walk this earth, for the many years that I have, and hopefully for many more years. I've come to terms with the fact that it's going to be a struggle, and it's even more a struggle for this next generation because of the use of technology and the, I guess, I don't know, you kind of get involved in the lifestyle that surrounds you. And this is where I come back to that eighth fire story. We found out that there was a decision to be made to follow a route, one of two routes. One of them will be to be addicted to technology, addicted to all the things that life can make things easier for you, or you can go the route of reclaiming our rights and responsibilities to our mother, the earth, and to Creator. And now when I think about these two routes under the eighth fire prophecy, it's so easy to follow that easy route of technology. Everybody wants all these nice things, cell phones and all this nice things, but where is it affecting our land and our water? And how are we balancing all that with keeping that healthy and clean? So what I come to know now is Indigenous people are going to be the balance to all that. In this eighth fire prophecy, Indigenous people have to question education, have to question engineering, have to question theory, all these things, because if all this good intention of an easier life is going to be at the cost of our mother, the earth, and our water, then realistically, how really good is it? Especially for our future generations. For this little guy here, what decision what he's going to have to live under during his time, as an adult. What decisions is he going to have to make, or what is he going to have to live with from our decisions that we've made? That's why that route really has to resonate with you, as people, because I think we're still at that stage where we can help our mother, the earth, and help keep things clean. But it's going to take a huge momentum and understanding of our culture to be able to remember how important that is. So I think, yeah, live in this world that has these things, but make sure that we're not defeating the things that's going to keep us alive, like our water, and all those beautiful things that Creator put on the earth for us, like our medicines and things like that. So this is why at this stage of my life, after all the things I've gone through, to become a teacher, become an advisor, to the generations after me, to consider these things. Consider your spirit name. Know what your clans are. Knowing these important elements of life that Creator gave us will help us set the tone of our decision making and our future, and pass that on to our children. Because I see people now that don't really know their spirit name, or don't know their songs, or don't know these things, and it's easy to fall in line with something that's impressive in front of you, and that's what I see with a lot of our generation. You're impressed by a lot of things, so it kind of takes a stronger hold, in your development. But when that elder or knowledge keeper comes in your life for a moment, what they try to do is to guide you on that little path that allows you to learn these things. An elder won't be in there for a long time, but they can be very impressive, like the elder that I mentioned earlier. had such a dramatic effect on my future. I refer back to that moment all the time. So you'll encounter various elders in your life. They'll give you some direction. They'll give you a place to ask your questions to, and you can kind of don't get too confused by various answers sometimes, because our cultures, you know, if we're Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, Cree, you know, Zuni, you know, Biloxi, all these different nations that are on Turtle Island, we have different protocols, different languages. But if you even go beyond that, you'll find where the unity is. It's our relationship to our mother, the earth. Every Haudenosaunee person, every Cree person will talk about the water, our mother, the earth, and our relationship with Creator. That is uniform between any nation, but that's even uniform across the world. Even within the religions of the world, you'll find that their basis comes from that, dealing with our Creator. Some of them don't deal with the land as much as we do, because we still value the land and love the spirit in the land that gives us water and food. But I think in most cases, it's that relationship that starts us on a road to knowing our responsibility. I've been fortunate to have been invited to visit the Muslim people, and they invited, and I got to meet their holiness, which is their highest level of leadership, a holy person in England. And in our conversation, through an interpreter, unfortunately, it was hard to speak, but we had to come to a terms that our brothers and sisters on this earth need that wealth of traditional knowledge. And I really, you know, I warmed up to that conversation so well, because everything that we talked about was so similar to the way Indigenous people think. And by media and by attention, you know, of politics, we've ostracized, you know, many of those nations around the world, because we link them to things that we don't agree with. 9/11 made people think that all Muslims were terrorists, and how it was projected in newspapers, you know, is that anybody who wears at that time they called it a turban, you know, were enemies or terrorists. And you know how we get, if we only hear that, sometimes we start believing that. So this is where my reason for bringing this up is your ceremonies when you talk to Creator. That's a one-on-one thing. That's something that you do through your tobacco or your Vision Quest ceremony. When you have that moment to talk to Creator directly, you can excuse yourself from how society looks at things and see the inner core of people around the world, and why we are called brothers and sisters. Every different nation, you know, that was put on this earth has a responsibility to the land that they were placed on. Us as the Indigenous people were put on Mother Earth. We're put on Turtle Island because the medicines that we have here, it's our responsibility to keep healthy. The water, everything that on this earth here is our responsibility. But if you go to Asia, where they have a nation like the yellow race that they called it in our medicine wheel, or the black or the white, they were given the responsibility of keeping those lands healthy and their water healthy and clean. And that's the only really difference. It was just the geography of where people, Creator put people. But we, as the Indigenous people of North America, are the ones that are responsible. And we remain that way because we were overtaken by people from across the seas. And here in North America, you know, when Europeans settled in North America, that's when things changed here. They brought technology, they brought, you know, different forms of religion. And in fact, they even thought it was superior to our people because they wanted to actually make us think and pray the way that they did over in their part of the world. They were informed that they needed to save the world and to bring them into a religion of how they practiced. So the original Jesuits, you know, that came over, in their heart, they thought they were doing something that was inspired by their creator, to come and find people who didn't believe in creator the way they did and convert them to that way of thinking. So I think in their heart, it was, we need to save those Indigenous people's lives. We need to bring them to God the way that we understand it. But they didn't give us a chance to tell them that we practice those things too. Every single day when we went and got our food, we gave our tobacco and our prayers. When we had to catch a deer for dinner, we had to give thanks to that spirit for giving us a chance to have sustenance, and for the spirit of that deer for giving itself up so that we can have food. Every single day, everything that we did was all about giving thanks for the things Creator gave us. So I think this is where we couldn't help them to understand that. They said, when you go to church on Sunday, you give your thanks, you give a day to God, but we didn't have a church. So we told them that we were giving thanks every single day, many times throughout the day. We'd start off in sunrise ceremony. We would wake up in the morning and we would welcome our Father Sun for coming to our territory, giving us life, giving us water, giving us heat, giving us sunshine and rays to raise our plants and all these things. And we gave thanks. We gave thanks to Grandmother Moon for looking after us during the evening. And then during the day, we had our regular course of action. We had to work, we had to hunt, we had to do those things. We'll always give thanks for those things. And every time I think of how they would not look at our scenario of spirituality, they blocked us out. They blocked other ways of talking to Creator out. When it's only one way and our way, and we have to make people see that, I really think that's the part that really challenged us, because they were so adamant, and they converted a lot of our communities to Christianity. In fact, residential schools were, it was necessary for them to practice Christianity in those schools. And, there's a lot of people that went to those schools that really do not and will never consider going to church anymore because it was imposed on them in that manner. And I can understand why. But I also think if we look beyond the imposition of the way that they were practicing their spirituality, if we boiled it down to the fact that we still talk to one Creator, no matter how that method is, whether it's through a church or whether it's through our ceremonies that we do, it's still talking to Creator with the way that we do things. So maybe the protocol that they have doesn't mean giving tobacco. Maybe they thought that was paganistic or something like that, but that's how we learn. We said that, tobacco is one of the things, the most sacred medicines that we have. And almost every culture, every indigenous culture in North America, look at tobacco as one of the medicines to talk to Creator. And I want to try to do this today. I want to try to encourage all of our nations to consider that, they put a wedge between us. In fact, if I can look at Southern Ontario right now, where there's 7 First Nation communities, I can name a few of them: Anjumnang, Chippewas of the Thames, Sarnia, Delaware, Oneida, Munsee, Delaware, Six Nations, and Caldwell. Those are the nations in Southern Ontario. The Anishinaabe nations, say Wapo Island and Kettle Point and Sarnia and Chippewa of the Thames and Caldwell, were all one nations at one time. During colonization, they separated those nations, and they made them separate entities, different governments. And when Canada was formed during Confederation period, they implemented a system called the Chief and Council system, and they made a lot of our hereditary governance systems disappear from those communities. Not every one of them. Six Nations and Oneida the Haudenosaunee communities kept their longhouses and their governance system alive, but a lot of them had lost their system of governance and had only been exposed to the Indian Act system of chief and council. I sit in that role sometimes, as a chief of my nation, and as a counselor today, I sit into a imposed governance system on our reserve. But I was able to speak with many elders about our clans and our system of how we practice our governance in the past before the Indian Act came in. And so I'm slowly trying to create an atmosphere of our nations to consider taking back our own governance system, through our clans. But first of all, we need to know our clans. A lot of people don't know their clans. And so there's ceremonies that can be done for people to identify what your clan is. I'm very fortunate in that manner too, because I do those ceremonies. I can do naming ceremonies and find a clan for somebody. And you don't even have to go through that method. Sometimes you can approach certain clans and they'll adopt you. But it's better to go through the clan system that your family has been put into. And sometimes that's hard to do, I understand. But if there's a way that you can find that through your own lineage, then that's what you pass on to your future generations. And if you're Haudenosaunee, you will go through your mother's clan. That's where you derive your clan from. But if you're Anishinaabe, you go through your father's side. And if you know what your father's clan is, then that's the clan that you will live under. So we have challenges today where Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe get married, and those two different scenarios come to play there. And I get that question all the time. In my reserve, Oneida is right across the river from us, so we call them bridge babies sometimes because there's a bridge between our nations. It's just a joke, but we always get this question about what clan do they go under. So I've done some ceremonies to try to figure that out. And what I've always come up with was that child will tell you what that clan is. Like the characteristics of that child will definitely be a bear, or definitely be a wolf, or definitely be a certain clan. And they'll basically tell you what clan they are. So we don't have to take on that responsibility of even argument to say, well, that child's going to be Ojibwe or Haudenosaunee clan. That child will have that clan very prominently displayed for you. So that's why we talk to our creator and we say thank you for those things, and we give him thanks for allowing us to resolve this. So I think this is why there's a lot of confusion in our young people today. Like, how do we approach these scenarios, and where do I find the basis of understanding from? So I think it's taking moments like this to be able to hear these stories out of your busy day, out of your school and raising family and your partners and work and all the things that make you busy. To take, the way I explain it is, life is a fast lane. You go through life, right? And everything you got to do is so busy. Your time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to sleep at night, you have something to do. But we were blessed with 4 seasons in this part of the world: winter, spring, summer, and fall. So if in the spring, which is coming up, I always say, take a moment of time and go sit on Mother Earth in the springtime, all by yourself. Take your tobacco and talk to Creator. That's your moment of reflection. And then when you get back to that fast-paced lane, you're more balanced and you're able to take on your responsibilities. And then in the summertime, do the same thing. Go out, sit by a water, by a tree, somewhere where you feel that solitude, just for a little while. Doesn't have to be very long, but regenerate. Ask the questions about who you are and what Creator put you on this earth and why you're going through the struggles, or thanking for the good things that you were given. And then go back into that fast lane, and then you're prepared again. You're balanced. You're ready to take it on. Do it again in the fall. Do it again in the wintertime. And then you'll see a world of difference in your energy, your confidence, your abilities to do the things that, you have to do. And you've given thanks because you feel good about giving creator acknowledgement and all those helpers that come, your clans and those elders and those spirit guides that come into your life. And you know what? I think I wouldn't be able to do what I do if I didn't do that. I don't think I would be able to. I live a very busy life. I'm involved with a lot of things. And, if I really looked at it in perspective, I wouldn't be able to do these things in an intelligent manner, without having those ceremonies, without having the ability to know these things, because I wouldn't be able to have confidence and be able to do these things, so every time I do that, I give thanks for that moment. I don't know how many years I have on this earth, but I think for the amount of times that I will have, I'll continue to work and talk to creator and to pass knowledge on to these young children, who are exploring and wanting to know, what they're hearing. So I see this little guy, I'm going to give him a little song here, because it's kind of like how we warm up these little guys' hearts with us. So, when he hears that heartbeat, he knows he's surrounded by love, and the creator gives him that knowledge, and he's hearing it, and he's learning it, and he's understanding it. Way up, hey, hey, hi, way up, hey, hey, way up, hey, hey, ha, way up, hey, hey, ho, hey, hi, hey, ho, hey, way, hi, hi, oh, way, hi, hi, hey, hey, ho, hey, way up, hey, hey, hi, way, hey, hey, way, hey, hey, ha, way, hey, hey, ho, hey, hi, hey, ho, hey, way, hi, hi, oh, way, hi, hi, hey, ho, hey, way, hey, hey, hi, way, hey, hey, way, hey, hey, ha, way, hey, hey, ho, hey, hi, hey, ho, hey, way, hi, hi, oh, way, hi, hi, hey, hey, ho, hey, way, hey, hey, oh, way, hey, hey, hi, hey, 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 way, hey, hey, ha, way, hey, hey, ho, hey, hi, hey, ho, hey, way, hi, hi, oh, way, hi, hi, hey, hey, ho, hey, way, hey, hey, oh. Woo. Oh, that felt good.
Regrets, Myeengun.
those special beats in that drum, when you hear them louder, they're honor beats. They're the ones that we send specially to creator for those moments. Sometimes you'll hear 4 or 7 of them, and they talk about that breaking of that routine, but making that moment with creator. Kind of like when you take that time out in those seasons to break your routine and go do your ceremonies. That's what those 4 beats really talk about in that song. So they're there for a purpose, and we think about that when we do things in life. So hope you like that, little guy.